Green Day fan over here.
Shut up. I was going to...
Green Day, they put out a new single. I gotta say, it's better than any of the new Blink songs.
I was going to say when we were talking
it's
about
not much
Blink,
better, but...
Yeah, that's a low bar. But when we were talking about Blink, I was like, I listened back to Warning. Also, probably, I think on...
I just listened to that song the other day. Not the album, but just that song.
The song's fine. The album's trash.
Yeah. The album's... See, I was going to say the album's pretty good, but that song is...
Oh.
I like a couple of those songs on that. Castaway. Castaway.
Church on Sunday.
Oh, Church on Sunday's great.
Misery.
I don't know if I remember that one.
It's
Macy's Day Parade, classic.
Okay, Macy's Day Parade. I'll give you that.
But that album is a little too stripped down. Like, it's so...
Oh, I was going to say it's a little too cute.
A little bit that, too, because it's like, they're basically like, look at us. We don't need distortion. Look at us. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines.
Hey there.
And once again, it's just the two of us. We're recording on a Thursday night here. I feel like we're back to our old ways here. But yeah, doing a little double tonight. We're stockpiling up a couple episodes for the holiday season and whatnot, just so we have a little more flexibility with our recording schedules. And we're like, hey, we've been playing quite a few games here, so let's chat some double duty on the games tonight. Randall will be joining us soon here for some more chit chat and whatnot. But speaking of just some gaming we've done lately, I know actually just last night, part of the reason we're recording on Thursday instead of Wednesday is because we got together with our bandmates from back when we were all living in Chicago. We've kind of parted and split ways across the country now at this point, so it's been a little while since we've got a gaming session together. And I will say, we finally, my Xbox was causing me some issues. I was going to try to update Overwatch. That's what we've played the last couple sessions, and I think I've talked about on previous times that we've talked about it on the podcast. Like, one of my gripes with playing that when we sync up for an online gaming session hangout is that we don't really hang out that much. We're talking about strategies and talking about,
where
X,
we
Y,
need
or
to be
Z.
on the map, who's taking care of what. Yeah, coordinating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not that we're that serious about it or anything, but it's just there's enough going on at any given time. And it's we kind of want to win. We're competitive enough that we want to make that happen. So last night we got together and fired up some Fall Guys. And I will say, apart from having a few issues getting connected on the front end that kind of hindered the getting connected, but I feel that also kind of kickstarted hey, we're just kind of talking and hanging. Mikey was struggling to get connected on his PC version, and then we played a few rounds with just the three of us, me, you, and Glenn. And then once Mikey joined in,
right after another, we're you know what? Yeah, stakes are gone. We're not going to win tonight. We're just hanging out and talking.
Yeah. Mikey joined in. It's we played a few more, and it was even funny. I know at one point you were I wonder if they optimized this game a little better for Switch now, because it's been a little while since we played it last. And it's no, I think they, I guess I will say my gameplay felt pretty smooth. It wasn't as choppy. I do remember there being kind of skipped frames almost when for me when I was playing, but it did almost feel the other players were that frame rate was maybe chopped in half or third, all the other
I remember that from when we first play it. Yeah, where it's you can see that there are other players on there, but they are limited to 2 frames per animation.
They're in stop motion animation to the extreme.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll say too, being that it's been so long, I was really expecting there to be a ton of new events and games and whatever. And again, I know this is a free to play game. I don't keep up with everything that's going on and how this game works and whatnot. But it was even the games that were new felt very old hat. It's just okay, this is another Global Guts, climb the top of the tower, who gets there first.
Here's a Sonic themed level that's
that one was kind of fun.
It was interesting,
in the novelty of it, but it's if you do it 5 more times, how fun is that actually going to be?
Right.
Even that kind of slip and slide level with the slime and those whatever, that was probably the most fun new thing. But at the same time, with all this weird jittery stop motion characters flying around you, it was kind of jarring at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. I was definitely glad we got together for another gaming session, but I'm curious to what we'll end up playing next time, because I don't think it sounded like any of us were let's play more Fall Guys next time we get together. But I I guess, well, real quick, too, while we're on the multiplayer topic, I am looking forward to, they just released that final batch of Mario Kart 8 DLC, which I think they added some new playable characters, but also the main thing, 8 new tracks. So that kind of rounds out. I think there's 96 tracks, if I'm not mistaken.
Good God.
And my buddies back home here in Michigan, we're planning on getting together and doing like an all day 96 track like event, and seeing who ends up at the top of the line or top of the charts. So I've been doing a little better the last couple times we played, nowhere near coming in first or anything like that, but I haven't come in last. So
hey,
there is part of me that's like, hey, Kamek's doing me well. I'm just going to ride it home. We'll have 8 new courses that we haven't played yet. So,
and you say that you're always, you've got all of your friends who are so much better than you, and then you come and play with us back at home or when we're online, and you just mop the floor with us. So
I'm getting that practice in, man.
Yeah, you're getting the reps and you're doing fine.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm definitely looking forward to that, but we can move on from there and just talk about some retro stuff here, John. I know you've been firing up, and I've been talking about, even on Save It for the Cast lately, I've been talking about a lot of like the Nintendo Switch Online retro stuff, and I know you've been firing up some NES stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
SNES.
Or are you okay, I wasn't sure if you were playing Earthbound Beginnings, which they added to like the NES version, which I think that's Mother, correct, if I'm not mistaken?
Correct. And Earthbound is Mother 2.
Okay.
So yes, I've been playing Earthbound for God knows how many times. I've played the opening, 5 hours of Earthbound maybe 10 times at this point on various systems. On the Super Nintendo Mini, I had a file on that, various emulations over the years. Consoles. Yeah, but I'm doing it yet again on the Nintendo Switch Online.
And you've never played beyond that like 5 hour mark? This isn't a game you've like completed before and then played just chunks of? Okay, because that's funny. That's how I am with this game and with Chrono Trigger. I haven't played 5 hours, but I probably put like an hour into each of these games.
Yep.
And never like played beyond that. And they're always like, I need to play those.
Basically every RPG that came out on the Super Nintendo is one that I've played a lot of the openings of and then never beat. But I have no idea if I'll actually see this one through, but it is interesting to go back to it, especially since I have kind of a history with the beginnings, but I still don't have either a nostalgia or that muscle memory or stuff built in from having played it a lot, even though I technically have played this game a lot, but I don't have a lot of it memorized like I do on some of the other games and like the Switch Online that I go back to. And it's Breath of Fire 2, I know so much like the back of my hand because I played a ton of that and I beat that game. Did I beat that game or did I just get to the final boss? Hard to say. I like 99%ed that game where I unlocked everything and then I probably stopped at the final boss in the final dungeon. But Earthbound is one where as I'm playing it, I'm like, I don't remember. Do I meet Paula first? Do I meet Jeff first? I don't remember which bosses have what weaknesses. So it is still kind of a new game to me, even though I've played it a lot. And as I'm playing it, I'm running into, the limitations of an RPG of that era. And I've played
all the random battles and all that stuff. Yeah.
But it's kind of nice because Earthbound has at least the overworld random battles where you see the enemies in the overworld and you can,
you do?
Yeah. It's
great.
It's
been so long since I played that game. I thought they were totally random because I know that's one thing I liked about Chrono Trigger, that they're not random. Like, again, same thing. You can see them on the overworld. I didn't realize that was the same in Earthbound.
Well, at least
it's been a long time.
But at least with Chrono Trigger, also you have the battles themselves like take place in the world map as well, so it just kind of like starts a battle in that, but
there in the setting it's a little more immersive. This like kind of has that like disjointed like first person like weird to me. I've never been a fan of that like aesthetic with like the weird like trippy like
so much
visuals in the background.
Is weird. Like it's just a very strange game in general. Like I remember playing a lot more of whatever fan translation of Mother 3 on an emulator, which is very weird because I don't think that's a more accessible game or anything in terms of how
I've never played any of that. I downloaded it at some point, like the translated version as well, and like had it on my like Cyclo DS Evolution cart on my DS that I had all my like ROMs on and stuff, but never really fired it up for more than a quick second, other than to like admire, like, man, this game looks great on Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
I would love to see that come over to the Game Boy Advance like service. They've done a great job with like bringing over some of these imports, but I know that translation work is a heavy load. I mean, I know there's fan translations out there, obviously, but
Mother 3 I have a lot of affection for, just because it is such an interesting game, and it
has like some rhythm gameplay, right, to like the battles or something like that. Or am I thinking of a different game?
Honestly, I can't remember, but mostly I'm just playing games that I've never really beaten and have the opportunity to now that I have the access to them on the Switch Online service, and maybe I'll see this one through, maybe I won't, but it's still nice to at least have it, and then have a kind of convenient way to play them in that, like, I don't know, playing the NES games I think is a lot easier with save states and rewinding and stuff, that it's nice to have, but also have it on a system that I can play on the television as opposed to setting up whatever ROMs I have. And it's nice. It's a fun experience.
There's a certain convenience to those like Switch Online service games or whatever, where it's just like, even I find myself firing up games that I probably wouldn't, like if I had to actually like blow in the cartridge of my NES and like try to, finnick around with it and get it to work, like probably wouldn't be playing Clue Land. But the fact that I can just fire it up on my Switch and get it going. And I will say though that it does, I don't think I have Clue Land in my collection, because I was like, it's just one of those like super old retro arcade NES games that I don't need in my collection, like those Black Label, like really early 80s game, or not early 80s, but late 80s, but early NES games. But then now that I've played it and had some fun with it, I'm like, maybe, that one doesn't go for top dollar. Maybe I do need to add that physical copy to my collection. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting in that regard. And actually, it's funny, the perfect transition here, because I've actually been playing, I mentioned on a Save It for the Cast recently that I've been playing some of like the Nintendo Switch Online stuff, and particularly some of the NES stuff, and that they added some import stuff. I was playing some Devil World, which is another game from Shigeru Miyamoto, and originally just thought of it as like, it's like a Pac-Man clone. It's got a little more to it than that, which I've really been enjoying. But they added recently, along with that, they added a new rendition. I think I've pronounced this wrong on the podcast, but I saw like a video recently. I think it's Ninja JaJaMaru. Okay. I think I've said JaJaMaru in the past, but there's like a remake of this game, or like kind of similar. I've mentioned it again. I think I mentioned it on a recent Save It for the Cast. Like we've talked about those Wild Guns, Pocky and Rocky, and then the Ninja Saviors or Ninja Warriors, like remakes / reimaginings. Mm-hmm. And this is published by the same publisher, In Games, and then it does have City Connection. I don't know if they're the developer. That's like an old retro arcade game, but like that's the like publisher, developer. I don't know. They have some connection to all of these games. And I was a little bit like, after firing up the Ninja JaJaMaru on the NES online, I was like, okay, this game is like, I get what it's trying to do, but it's like that really retro, jank, stiff, like 8-bit. It's like NES, but it almost feels like an Atari game. Like, it didn't really grab my attention. Like, I was like, I love the art of like the box art essentially, or like the thumbnail art for the game, especially on like the Famicom cartridge, which is the only system that it came out on. But they released it. It's been in my wish list on my Amazon cart for like the longest time. This like, it's called, let's see, what is it here? It's Ninja JaJaMaru, the Great Yokai Battle plus Hell.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. And then it also comes with, I think that's like just some kind of like DLC-ish thing. I don't really know. And then it also comes with like a full separate like 5 games. So it has like the original Ninja JaJaMaru on NES, the 2 sequels to that on NES, like a Game Boy game, and I think a Super Nintendo game as well, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know which of those had made it to the West before or not. But again, like playing it had never fully grabbed my attention, playing like the Switch Online version and the original retro version. But knowing that there was like this reimagining remake out there, I was like, it looks kind of cool, but it didn't look like it was up to the snuff of like those Wild Guns, and it didn't look like it was remade with that same level of love. But those games were all Super Nintendo games, and this was like an NES or like really 8-bit game, where all his other ones were 16-bit or even like pushing 32-bit almost, if like with Ninja Saviors. I don't remember if that was an arcade game or not, but like definitely was like pushing the boundaries and really some like lovely pixel art. So just seeing this game in action, like it has like moments where like the sprites are like huge on the screen, and it's like almost like it looks so janky when you just see it in motion. But when you're actually the one playing the game, it's like this really frantic, like, I don't know, it's hitting all the right marks. It actually, I noticed it was on, I had $10 worth of Amazon points, like on my credit card or whatever, with my Amazon card. And then the game's normally $30 for a physical copy, but it was down to $17. So I was like, well, if I only have to pull $7 of my real money out to buy this game, I think I can finally pull the trigger on this. And if it doesn't hit the mark, whatever.
Yeah.
And I will say, I fired up all the retro games. None of those are really hitting the mark. I mean, they're interesting in and of their own right, just to play them and see what they're all about, especially because a lot of them never did come over here to North America, to the best of my knowledge. But I will say, playing this like Great Yokai Battle version, oh my God, it's so fun. Nice. And it has a 2-player mode that I could definitely see myself, like either Randall and I, or just like anytime you just like, hey, let's have some drinks and like rip through some of these levels. It's a little simplistic is like the only gripe I would level at it, but like all the rigidness and stiffness that I was worried about, like, well, if that's how the original game feels, if they're going to kind of emulate that, and from the videos I'd seen in the trailers and whatever, it looked like it was looking for that, but like it's like modernized that feeling just enough. It still has that floaty, rigid retro feel, but it's like fine-tuned it and modernized it just enough to where it feels smooth and fun. And there's like all these different playable characters where they all have just like slightly different like health and slightly different power to their attacks and slightly different like methods of attack. And you can play as all the different enemies, and you're just almost like, it's not a roguelike, but you are kind of grinding and like getting coins and just unlocking stuff and like basically like running through this slot machine of like unlocking new goodies. And it's just something about the presentation is like so gaudy and over the top, but so hitting the mark. Like it does have that level of love that I was worried it didn't have, or that it wouldn't have, that like Wild Guns and all those other games have had. And it definitely has that level. I don't know if this is fully the same team involved, but it fits it. Like I'm adding it. It's not a trilogy anymore. This is like a quadrilogy collection of reimagined retro games, and I'm loving it.
You couldn't have done a better transition into my game. Just like every single thing that you basically just said is
heck yeah,
almost word for word what I would say about the game that I'm bringing really tonight, which is Risk of Rain Returns. And I'm pumped to hear about this because I totally kind of forgot that they were even making this, until I didn't
like,
even know.
And then you were like, "I've been playing this," and yeah.
Like someone in our Discord posted about it, and I didn't know that it was happening because I remember there was a point in time where Gearbox either bought the IP, acquired Hopo Games, or something, and that was not necessarily me being like, oh, well, the Risk of Rain series is dead or whatever, but it was something where I was like, I'm not as invested in necessarily the development cycle of everything that's happening. Right.
I'll be curious what Hopu does next, but like, I don't know what's going to happen with Risk of Rains. We'll see. Yeah.
Right. And I think that this is still mostly developed by Hopu Games. Like, I think that it is still co-developed or released by both Gearbox and Hopu. But like this one, I still think that they had a pretty big hand in the development of. But what it is a reimagining and a kind of remake of the original Risk of Rain, which was a really fun, really great 2D shooter, and then or platformer shooter, roguelike
shooter, a little bit of like a looter shooter kind of, like in some regards. Like it's a weird game because it's like it's a platformer, deliberate, but there's not like a focus on platforming. Like you're running and jumping, but there's no like you don't really need to be good at platforming for the game or anything like that.
And but you're just acquiring items that break the physics or break the things. So you
break the game, basically break the game, overpower you in some regard and just lean into those like buffs and stuff.
That's kind of part of explicitly part of the game is getting these power-ups that either completely warp a certain aspect of how you play, and so that changes how you approach the run. And the original game I played on keyboard, just keyboard. So like it was Z, X, C, and V for your 4 attacks, and then the arrow keys to move, and spacebar to jump. So it was a really kind of esoteric, at least for me, like control scheme that I wasn't really used to, where those 4 main attacks are all on cooldowns based on what character you play as. And I remember when Risk of Rain 2 came out, which I have been on record on this podcast as saying it's a masterpiece and one of my favorite games.
It's so much fun.
Oh, but like that, so Risk of Rain 2 was a translation of the mechanics of 1 into 3D, and I think is just so impressive to maintain that feeling and that level of managing your cooldowns of those attacks, and navigating and exploring, and the pressure of, here are hordes of enemies as you're trying to find the teleporter or maintain like getting power-ups and money and stuff, like all on these runs, and it's still very brutal and punishing.
The fact that they were able to emulate that same level of pressure with like a full-blown 3D environment as opposed to like the 2D environment. I don't know, the way they were able to kind of translate that game into 3D. Again, I know we talked about this before too, I'm sure, but it's beyond impressive to the point where I was like, I wonder why they're making this Risk of Rain Returns. Like, it was kind of like out of nowhere. It's like, either why are you not making Risk of Rain 3? Not that needs to exist or anything, but it's just like, what is the point? Like, what was missing from 1 that it like needed a remake? And that's why I was curious about it, because it even visually or whatever. Again, I haven't seen it too much in action, but the trailers, like, it doesn't look like it's a huge visual overhaul, or there's nothing too much that looks different at a glance, at least.
It is just saying it. When you beat the game and you see the credits, it has the sprite comparison of every enemy like next to each other from the original to Returns, and it's incredible. Like, I think I love so much of Risk of Rain Returns, and like part of it is just we had a little bit of this conversation off how like a thing that I kind of feel is missing from a lot of indie game development that is not necessarily, it's kind of difficult to emulate in the environment that we live in now, where before, when there were such massive differences between console generations, where if you developed a game for the NES and then developed a game for the Super Nintendo, like there was so much different mechanically that you had to kind of reimagine what your game was if you were making a sequel between those two, or like making a series where you're like, all right, how do we translate what makes this game into a next generation of consoles? And you don't really get that in a lot of games. I can't really think of many games that even have series like between different like PC generations or anything, console generations in the indie game sphere. Like Rogue Legacy 2 is kind of one of the few that I can think of where even then, like, it doesn't necessarily change the mechanics of the game so much. You're not really,
it's just like a beefed up version of number 1 with like everything that they wish they could have done in the first one. And probably like if they had the skill they had when they made 2, when they made 1, all the stuff would have been in that game probably, and let alone, obviously you need to have the experience of making the first game to come up with the new ideas for 2 and whatever. And
that's a thing that I love. I love when a developer gets more experience.
It's another shot. Yeah, yes. It's another shot at what they already made, even if whether it was good or not, and even like up to its full potential. Yeah.
Also the idea or like conception that, you're always improving. It's like, no, maybe you'll just make something different. Like we were talking about the differences between Anodyne and Anodyne 2. Like they're not necessarily like, one's a better game than the other. They're just doing different things because the people who are developing the game are able to do different things, or they want to prioritize a different thing between titles. So anyway,
Yeah.
all of that is to say that, going back to Risk of Rain Returns, it was a game that I was not following the development of and really wasn't even focusing on. But I saw that it came out and I was like, all right, I'll get that because
it's got a 15% discount or 10%. I saw that it was discounted on like launch. I was like, oh, that's enough. I almost bought it myself.
Yeah. And having loved the original and loved 2, I booted it up with sight unseen without any knowledge. And right off the bat, it has a couple. I think I actually booted up the original one first before I even played Returns because I wanted to just kind of get a refresher on the 2D like mechanics because I had been playing 2 nonstop. The only Risk of Rain I had played for so long was just 2, and I hadn't played the original in so long. So I booted that back up, played a run of that, and died really quickly because I was so bad at it. And when I went to Returns, they have a bunch of customization options where there are so many new items that 2 added to the series, and you are given the ability to add in some new mechanics, some new items, new stages that they've made for Returns that weren't in the original. You can play it. You can play it with the original rule set, or you can play it with a new rule set, or you can play it as a custom with a combination between the 2. And I've been
stuff you like.
Yeah.
Nix out the stuff you don't like. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's so good. And then there are additional things like they have the 3 difficulty levels are drizzle, rainstorm, and monsoon. That's been consistent through all 3 games. And that affects enemy health, enemy spawn rates, as well as the speed in which the difficulty increases, because the thing that's maintained consistent throughout the games is the longer that you spend playing the game, the more difficult it gets. So there's always a pressure to continue moving forward or to explore as efficiently as possible, to kill enemies as efficiently as possible. If you are spending too long doing any one thing, you are just making the game more difficult. So there's always this pressure to keep moving, keep doing things. And I think that's such a great way to do difficulty in a roguelike
again. Yeah, that tug of war again. And I really think that this game, I'm assuming you've played mostly solo here, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I remember playing specifically the original. I know we've done some co-op, online sessions with Risk of Rain 2, but particularly with the original Risk of Rain, DJ and I used to play that quite a bit co-op together. And I know I've talked about quite a few times, DJ and I are very different gamers. we both like to go for 100% in certain situations, but it just seemed like with this game, I was always let's move. DJ was we need to comb and get every last thing we can get, where I'm we need to just move and keep keep the difficulty as low as possible and keep
the
moving
optimal
forward.
Player. DJ's wrong.
But no, I think that with the multiplayer side of things with this game, and I don't know if Risk of Rain Returns, I'm assuming it's got online multiplayer.
Yep. I believe so.
So that kind of has me tempted to just scoop this up as well, because I think it's a game that they probably could have easily charged $20 or even $25 for, because that's just what games go for these days. And I think it's only $15. So
yeah, but
that makes it a little more enticing, especially when you get that launch discount. It's $10 or $12. I might as well scoop this up. I already like the original and the sequel. So
yeah, but just the way that they were able to translate the mechanics of 1 into 2, and then different gameplay mechanics of 2 back into one. It's
almost,
it's incredible. I love seeing a series of indie development. I really want more indie developers to either make the same game on different things. We've seen a couple Pico 8 D-makes or other D-makes or remakes from certain developers, but I really wish it was a thing where we don't really have the option. If you make an indie game for consoles, it can pretty much just be made in an engine and then ported across all consoles. Even between, you can get the same thing from that was developed for a Wii game that now can be played on a Switch. And so that's 3 generations of consoles that you don't really need to have there's no reason to really make anything in a different engine, but I think in the way that I always make the comparison of video games to music, but that's how my brain works because music is the medium that I work creatively in. But the idea of like creating the same song in a different genre or with different instrumentation, like what are the core things that makes a piece of music that piece of music? Like what are the core gameplay things that make a game, and then translating that into different iterations I think is fascinating.
Yeah, what makes something a Risk of Rain game? You know, at this point, now that there's 3 releases in the franchise, it's like what, you know, again, I kind of thought Risk of Rain Returns was truly just like, hey, if you don't own Risk of Rain 1, here's a better version of that. And now that I'm like, even
it
truly, if
is,
you and I
but
play
also
online
it's
once,
its own thing.
Yeah, I'm like, if you and I play online once, or especially if we can round up a couple more peeps, like that's worth it to me right there. So
yeah. I'm a little bummed that I played it at the tail end of 2023 because I think it's going to be a sleeper hit on my 2023 game of the year, whatever, as opposed if I had waited just a little bit longer and played it in 2024. But it's been a good year for games, man.
Yeah, this is definitely a year that I'm going to have to kind of go back and like look through things more than in the past. Cause like, I feel like I've played a ton of games obviously, but I've had such like little bursts of like, okay, I'm gaming, trying to do a few streams here and there. I just haven't fully gotten into my groove with that stuff. So like the games that have stuck with me the most, I'm curious what those games are going to be when I actually look back and like kind of think about it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we can pretty much leave it there. I'm guessing you're probably going to be playing some more Risk of Rain. And honestly, again, even if it's not, even if that launch discount is gone, I'm like, for $15, I might snag this game right now. If me, you, and Randall, or me, you, and the Boss Fight guys can like commit to playing an online session one time, I'll buy this game.
Yeah.
So
I think it's worth it.
But then again, I'll play Risk of Rain 2 anytime. Like I'm always like, again, we got to get Mikey on that Nintendo Switch Online service because like. We could play Risk of Rain, although that has crossplay too. So,
and I think he has it on PC,
Steam, or something. Yeah. I'm sure he doesn't have it on Switch. So,
if you have the option, do not get Risk of Rain 2 on Switch. Get it on a system that can properly play it
a little more effectively. Not that Switch. I mean, it gets the job done.
Oh yeah.
I can definitely feel like it would run better on any other platform.
If you're playing on Monsoon, as soon as you get a horde of enemies, that game does not have a frame rate.
Yeah, back to that stop motion Fall Guys territory. But but yeah, I think we can pretty much leave it there for this week on the video games chit chat. And I was going to say pretty much there for this year. This episode might be coming out in 2024. I'm not sure at this point, but yeah, all sorts of good video game stuff. And I think we can leave it there at this point. So yeah, as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com. Just look us up at Pursuing Pixels. We're pretty much everywhere on the internet. And otherwise, we'll catch you next week. And until then, take care.
Bye. I also didn't have like much time or any time really to practice. So I was like, today, all I went was like, all right, can I do this again? And I started doing it. It's like, yeah, I had an idea in my head is like, I'm going to try to do this. And then I started doing this. I was like, if I did this in front of people, it would be miserable. So I was like, all right, let's have some structure. Let's start to like plan this out beforehand because no, you're not good enough to be like, I'm going to start from silence and I'm going to build it up into something interesting. I was like, no, it's going to be 5 minutes of bad noise before anything good happens.
Yeah, I need a template or something to work off of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least have it be in tune first.
Mm-hmm. Got a flashback to your wedding, man. And that opening.
Well, that's the only thing that, like, I found out after the fact where, like, that specific synthesizer needs to warm up. And that was the...
Oh, I don't know if I knew that. I thought...
If you power it... When you power it on, it needs to warm up to get in tune.
Ah, because I remember Glenn thought he, like, tweaked, like, a setting or something that triggered it.
Yeah, but also, again, nobody cares.
And also, it's kind of like a fun laugh. Yeah. Like, at least that's my mindset. I know everybody's different. Some people would be like, this is a tragedy. It ruined my wedding. Like, to me, I'm just like, that's just a funny laugh to have with my friends that for a thing that happened at our wedding, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody could even hear it, really. And I'm sure if anybody did, they were just like,
what the fuck?
What is that? What song are they playing? What the fuck?
Two of them are playing This Must Be the Place. And the third person
familiar, but man, what are they doing here?
Is a car backing up?
This isn't
into the venue? But in rhythm to the song?
That is, what a satisfying feeling when like your turn signal is just like clicking to the rhythm of the song. You're just like, let's go. Today's a good day. Today's a good day.
All right.